This is Continuous Improvement Television, CITV, and I'm Jack ReVelle. Today, we'll be talking with Patrick Reilly, the founder and chairman emeritus of the Council for Continuous Improvement, about building a national learning environment. But before we turn our attention to Pat, I'd like to share with you for just a couple of moments about future telecasts. Next month, our guest will be Gregory Watson, formerly a vice president with Xerox Learning Systems and now a full-time consultant. He'll be talking with us about benchmarking and strategic benchmarking, an area in which he's especially knowledgeable, as demonstrated by his several books on the topic. In the following month, in October, we'll be with a gentleman who is a legend in his own time, Dorian Shainin, talking about statistical engineering. And in November, we'll be with George Labovitz, the founder and CEO of Organizational Dynamics Incorporated. He'll be talking about his new book, Making Quality Work. And now I'd like to announce for the first time publicly who my guest will be in the first half of 1995. In February, I'll have a good friend, a gentleman named Steve Ungvari. Steve is the president of ASI International. ASI, of course, is the American Supplier Institute, located in the Detroit, Michigan area. Steve will be talking about TRIZ, T-R-I-Z. TRIZ is an acronym for a Russian name, and it's all about problem solving. It's a technique that was discovered in Russia nearly 40 years ago, but which is only now coming here to the United States. Steve will be talking about problem solving from Russia with data. In March, we'll be having Peter Schultes, the author of the Team Handbook, as our guest. He'll be talking about teams and why we work together as opposed to working individually. In April, Mr. William Conway, former CEO of Nashua Corporation and now the chairman of his own company, Conway Quality. He'll be talking to us about what every CEO needs to know about quality. And for you folks who are watching and are interested in having your CEOs get more involved in continuous improvement, our April presentation should be especially interesting to them. In May, we're going to have Shin Taguchi, the son of the world-famous author and statistician, Dr. Junichi Taguchi, who will be talking to us about using robust design and the loss function for variability reduction. Shin is currently the president of the American Supplier Institute. And then finally in June, we'll have another extremely well-known statistician, Dr. George Box. George is an emeritus professor now at the University of Wisconsin, where he was the director of the Center for Quality and Continuous Improvement. And he'll be talking about design of experiments, a classical approach. So that's our formula for success in the beginning of 1995. Steve Ungvari, Peter Schultes, William Conway, Shin Taguchi, and then George Box. So I would urge you folks who are thinking about should we subscribe or not subscribe to continuous improvement for the 6 months starting in 1995, I would urge you to think favorably about this and turn your attention to us on the second Monday of each month. Having gone through our litany of future telecasts, I think it's time now to turn our attention to our very, very special guest, Pat Reilly. I've mentioned that Pat is the founder and the chairman emeritus of the Council for Continuous Improvement. By way of background, Pat has both an undergraduate and a graduate degree in psychology from Bowling Green University in Ohio. He has had numerous marketing-related responsibilities with a variety of firms here in the United States, primarily in the electronics field, most recently with National Semiconductor. He's worked with as a director of marketing with Enhansys, a software-oriented company. He was then president, president of Jones Reilly consulting firm, and then founded the Council for Continuous Improvement. Our focus today will be on the Council for Continuous Improvement, how it came about, what it's doing, what its future looks like, and some ideas that Pat has for the future of a national learning environment here in the United States. So let's turn our attention now to Pat and I'd like to say welcome very much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time out of what I know is an extremely busy schedule. Pat and I had a chance to have dinner together last night and renew old acquaintanceships. We've known each other for about 10 years, and we got to talking about some of the things that he's been doing, and Pat, you're a very busy young man.
Yeah, keeps me out of trouble, definitely.
Well, at least you haven't been caught yet.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Let's talk about first CCI. Where did the idea come from? How did the germination of what is now known as the Council for Continuous Improvement get started?
Okay.
And excuse me for interrupting you before you've even had a chance to get started. What we have here on the table, as I'm sure you've all recognized already, is a keyboard for a computer, and all of the graphics that you're going to see today are computer generated. It's the first time we've tried this, so we're going to try and do it right the first time and do our very best that we can. But if you see Pat playing games here, he's not writing a letter home to mom and dad. What he's doing is calling up specific graphics to help amplify with some of the oral comments that he's going to be making. And excuse the interruption, Pat. Go ahead.
I was telling Jack that this is my first attempt at driving on the electronic superhighway, so bear with me. Hopefully I'll have no scrapes on the way. CCI actually got started back in probably the end of 1987. I was involved with an organization, as you had mentioned, the Jones, Reilly and Associates, and we found that many of our companies were having the same issues, having the same problems. What we would do is we'd go into a company, be talking to the individuals there, and I kiddingly used to tell people that I could sit here and put a tape recorder on the middle of the table and turn that on, and although the names were different, the faces were different, the issues that they were addressing were very much the same, and it began to dawn on me, why aren't these people sharing with each other? You know, I as a consultant would hear this, and obviously as a consultant I'd learn from that experience and go to the next experience and pass on the information yet again. So the whole idea was how we could learn and share with each other. We felt that by building a user group, if you will, of people that were trying to learn how to do continuous improvement, they would become better off, better leveraging their experiences by not reinventing the wheel. As one of our early members said, it was the idea of let's stand on each other's shoulders versus standing on each other's toes. And that was really the idea behind this, is how can we learn and share from each other?
That's great. You know, it occurs to me something I should have done earlier, and that is to remind our viewing audience that this is an interactive telecast, and we'd like to encourage you to call us or fax to us your comments or your questions relative to anything that Pat or that I might have to say during the course of this 2-hour telecast. The phone number that I would suggest you call is area code 602-621-7471. And our fax number, if you choose not to go on the air and you'd rather just have us read your question, is area code 602-621-8136. We'd love to hear from you either live or by fax. Let us know who you are and where you're calling from, you know, by John or Mary Doe, and I'm calling from the XYZ company in whatever city or location you happen to be in. But I think it would be very appropriate if you were to give us a call, give us a fax, and let us know what you're thinking. It might just be a knee-jerk reaction to something we've said that either you've taken offense to, and I know that, you know, by my own personal history, that's very easy to do, or it might be something that you agree with and you'd like to amplify on. Whatever the case may be, please, we encourage you to call in. We had several calls last time when we had Mike Broussard on, and I hope we can break that record this time. Pat, let's come back to you now. Once the idea of CCI began to germinate in your mind, how did it begin to grow? What did you do to cause what we now call the Council for Continuous Improvement to happen, to become a reality?
Okay. Well, one of the first things that I did was approach the companies that we were actually working with in our consulting business. I felt that they would at least realize that I only had one head, not two heads, and so this idea was at least semi-baked, if not fully baked. And so by approaching some of those early folks, and particularly the people that we approached was Motorola, Texas Instruments, National Semiconductor, and a few others in the semiconductor industry, we approached them with the concept of the council. And what we really began to discuss was two issues. One was they were more and more bringing internal consultants into their organization. And so they needed the place where those internal consultants could rub shoulders, if you will, with others that were internal consultants at other companies.
To kind of have a learning environment for their own internal consultants
Exactly.
to continue to grow.
Exactly. And then the second thing that we realize is if we did our job right, if this council became successful, then we would have to document what we learned, that we couldn't just sit there and rely on when the new kid came on the block and asked the same silly question that I just asked 6 months ago, we'd have to reassemble the troops and begin the dialogue over again. We decided, let's document what we learn in a multiple settings. So we documented everything from when we made presentations to if someone asked for a question and we received responses. If someone said, let's build training materials, we would do that. So the whole idea was to, again, kind of the idea behind building a learning environment, build an environment that was friendly. It allowed us to come with our silly questions, our problems, our issues as implementers and learn from others that were out implementing at the same time.
Did you find a receptive audience as you initiated this conversation?
I always go back to one very, not prophetic, well, it was prophetic, conversation I had with a vice president of Motorola. I went in and talked to him about the idea of the council. And I remember him sitting across the table from me, and he said, Pat, you have no idea what a good idea you have and how big this idea is going to be. And I remember sitting back and thinking, you know, he's right, because I'm not afraid. If I saw probably where this was going to go, I might be panic-stricken and go back to my life and doing what I was doing. But I just said, well, let's just figure out how we could work together, and as a result of that, we'll see where it goes. The organization will take us to where it goes.
Did you never face resistance in the people that you spoke to?
Absolutely, we faced some resistance. There were people out there, I remember some that said, you mean my competitors are going to be in the same room that I'm going to be in, and you want me to tell them all my secrets? And our silly answer was, yeah, and they had a problem with that. And so what has actually happened when we started this organization, as I said, it was back now in 1988 that we really began to put people together, we began to realize it was a self-selecting group. People that realized that, you know, by that sharing, I'm going to be ahead of the game, they were the guys joining the club. So the folks that joined the club were those that saw that this is the way the world was going to be going. The good news is today, this is a known fact. Everybody's saying you got to benchmark, you have to go out, you have to learn from your competitors, you have to learn from whoever. You know, if you're in the auto industry, go down and look at a guy making pottery so that I can learn from that. Back then, we were avant-garde. We were kind of pushing the envelope as far as learning and sharing.
Now, how many people or how many organizations were represented in this original assemblage of what we now call CCI?
Back then, in fact, I think we have a view graph of that. Back then, we had 8 organizations. That was the first group that came together. And you know, one of our first missions, to be quite frank, was to come back and say, what are we doing? Why did we do this? And so the point behind those first meetings was to really design the mission, the charter, how we were going to work together. I mean, quite literally, we got in a room, 8 of us, from 8 different organizations, and went around the room and said, why are you here? Why did we start this?
What level were these people from their organizations?
The people that were there ranged from vice presidents to directors of quality and directors of training.
So fairly senior people?
They were very senior people within the organization.
They were the movers and shakers, the people that controlled budget allocation.
Exactly. And a little bit of the vision as well. They realized where they were. In fact, the seating arrangement worked out very much to our luck, because the first person that I called on and saying, why are you here? What did you expect to get out of the council? Said that he did audits for his organization. And he said, I come in and audit my organization, but typically customers come in and audit my organization. He said, when those customers come in, they give us 80s, 90% on our audits. He said, I would come through 2 weeks later to do our internal audit, and we'd end up getting 40s and 50s. He said, so I knew we marketed quality quite well, but I knew how we were doing quality. It was quite different than how we marketed it. And to be quite frank, that was a breath of fresh air, because again, the first meeting of a group, you have no idea where this is going to go. Yeah. And we went around that table, and everybody had those same refreshing, honest experiences. And truly, that same feeling is still there today, still drives us today, that I'll show you my warts, and you're going to show me yours, but because of that, we're going to be a little better off as human beings, because we learned a little bit from that little experience there.
Now, I think you mentioned that there was 8 organizations, 8 people that were represented at this original first meeting of the council, and I know from, because my own company has been a member of the Council for Continuous Improvement, Hughes Missile Systems Company, that you've grown considerably. Can you give us an idea of how many companies are represented now and what your growth pattern looks like, and maybe even who some of the member companies are?
Okay. We've been quite pleased with the growth that we've gone through. As I said, we started with a group of 8, and literally that first year, we kept it to 8. I had seen so many announcements in the press that says so-and-so merge and start something. 6 months later, to have a retracted statement in the press saying so-and-so demerged and did not go into partnership with each other. And so we quite frankly kept the doors closed and worked for a year behind the scenes to decide what were we going to be and to make sure that the baby would get born, to put it kind of bluntly. And after that first year, the baby was born. And so again, I think we have a graph that sort of shows the growth that we went through as we started in @89, and then really in the middle of 1990, where you see that first tick in the graph, is where we began to go out and tell others of this. Today, as of at least a few days ago, we reached now 180 members within the organization.
180?
So a member is anything from the healthcare industry, as it shows here, and we have, in fact, that's 2 of the fastest growing areas in America that's joining the council right now are healthcare and the government. It's kind of interesting how those are a little intertwined with each other. But we have everything from the government, for example, the CIA and National Security Agency, and in fact, the United States intelligence community is a member of this organization. So a group that is not known for being outgoing is very much outgoing and becoming a member of the council.
If you'll forgive me, it seems like the 2 are the antithesis of each other, because healthcare is obviously good for our health, and there's a lot of people that would say that the government is not good for our health.
I think the people that say the government is not good for our health have been talking in the past. If you look at what has been happening with President Clinton and Vice President Gore, their whole reinvention of the government, that's the whole issue behind that, is to say that we haven't been the government that we want to be, but we will be the government that we have to be. And so we're quite pleased, as I said, that the government, and now we have a few notables in there. The Postal Service has become a member, and we've all heard stories about the needs that they have as far as continuous improvement, so we're pleased that...
I think most of us have experienced the needs.
That's right. So we're pleased that Marv Runyon and his crew have become active participants in the organization. Patent and Trademark Office, National Institute of Health. In fact, one of the things that I'd like to show is I'm going to go through briefly a list of CCI members, because I've come to realize there's probably 3 different types of people that are watching this show today. Those of you that have never heard of CCI or wondering what is CCI, those of you that are members of CCI, and the bad news is there's 2 different types of you. What we have found is there's actually members that are very active and very engaged inside CCI, but then what we've also noticed is there are people that come up to us and say, how do I get my organization to join? And I hate to say it, how many times I have to tell them, you're already a member, you've already paid your dues, it's free, you don't have to do another thing but come to the meetings and we'll get you engaged. And so one of the things that I'd like to offer with those phone numbers that Jack had shown earlier, for those of you that are in that first category, that you are not current members but have questions, please pick up the phone and make a call to ask us what are the types of things CCI can do for me. So be very specific in the issues that you have. For those of you that fall into that second category, as I breeze through this elongated list of members, if you didn't know you're a member, do us a favor. If you would call in and just leave your name and number. We won't embarrass you by saying it over the lines here, but if you'd leave your name and number, we'd be happy to contact you after the show and let you know how you can get engaged in this organization. For those of you that are active members, I would welcome you to call in and give us some of your experiences. Hopefully that this experience that you are going through is very favorable and positive, and we'd like to hear from you.
Okay, before you talk about the organizations that are members of the Council for Continuous Improvement, let's get those phone numbers back up on the screen for the people who might have missed them the first time. Both area code 602. The phone number is 621-7471, and the fax number 621-8136. Give us a call, give us a fax, let us know what you're thinking, ask questions. If you don't want to come on the air, that's okay. Just send us a fax. If you'd like to come on the air, just give us a call. I got the phone right here and be happy to bring you up on the air. Okay, now let's come back, Pat, and talk about who are these organizations that are members?
All right, they range, and again, I think we have a foil to this. They range from very small organizations, meaning I think our smallest member is 40 or 50 people inside the company, to very large organizations. As I said, I'm probably not supposed to say the size of our intelligence community, but those organizations are a little larger in size and scope.
Let me ask, of the organizations that you can talk about, what is the largest organization that is an active dues-paying member of CCI?
Yeah, currently, the largest organization that is a dues-paying member today is the United States Postal Service. They have, I think it's 580,000 individuals as part of the organization.
You don't let them pay in stamps, do you?
No, they haven't offered yet to pay in stamps. So, and the price of the membership is based on the number of employees, so it does become more cost-effective for large organizations per those number of employees.
Yeah, it's a sliding scale, if I recall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you look at the names that are coming up on the screen, they run everything, as we were saying earlier, from very service-oriented organizations to very hard-oriented product manufacturers. And as we're going to hear in the rest of this morning, is the issues that we talk about in our meetings range in the scope from anything from what are the CEOs thinking and what are the issues that they have that are addressing the problems and issues that they've got, all the way through is what is HR attempting to do and what are software people attempting to do, what is customer service, what is sales attempting to do to improve their organizations. So again, I go back and kind of mention, if you see your name on the list, that means you're a member. So someone has graciously paid your dues, and I would say that please make yourself, avail yourself to the services that you get, because once you're a member, everything within CCI is free. As we're going to be talking about, there is no hidden dues, if you will, after the membership dues.
You know, I missed it. Is Raytheon a member?
Yes, they're in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes, the semiconductor group within Raytheon.
Yeah, being with Hughes Missile Systems Company, I'm always concerned about what Raytheon is doing, their missile operation. Okay, I just want to make sure we stay ahead of them.
Okay. So that's the current list as of, as I said a few days ago, that we have as far as membership.
What kind of projections do you have for membership?
Well, this year they're expecting that we will hit easily the 200 mark by the end of the year, and we have plans of exceeding 300 to 400 actually by the end of '95. So we have some very
You're talking about more
plans.
than 1 or 2 additions a week.
It's averaging about 2 additions per week, exactly.
Then clearly you're not the only one that's doing marketing.
No, what we've built is an organization that goes out and lets people know what CCI is about, and the good news about it is that most of the member companies are very supportive of the growth issue, because they realize by us having multiple opinions and multiple folks in the fold with us, that we are, again, going to have different opportunities to learn and share with each other. So we actually have a group of, if you will, marketing promotion folks around the United States that support the current membership in finding others that they want. So our current members are bringing in folks like their vendors, are bringing in people that are their suppliers and their customers. And so we see that they have a vested interest in growing this organization.
It sounds like then CCI has some permanent professional staff, is that right?
Absolutely, yes. What CCI has done is we have outsource many of the activities that we do, because if you look at what CCI, where we're going, quite frankly, is we don't know, because it's being driven by the membership. You, the members, come up with the issues that are hot today. For example, I tell people 2 years ago the word re-engineering wasn't on anybody's lips. You know, maybe a fellow named Mike something was writing a book, but the rest of us weren't aware of what
he wielded a big hammer.
That's right, exactly. We weren't aware of what he was going through, but currently today, CCI now has a re-engineering special interest group. We are actually developing a re-engineering workshop of how does your organization go about re-engineering. So getting back to the staff issue, what we have done is we've got a kernel of staff, a very small staff, that is focused on the customer service issues. And so they do everything from managing the special interest groups, managing the meetings. They manage the newsletters, the direct communications that we have.
The
with
networking kind of activities.
Exactly. And then they also manage the regional offices. One of the goals that we have is to put regions around the United States.
Now, you already have 2 or 3, if I recall.
We have 3 currently in Northern California, Southern California, and Arizona. We say they're all the same region down here, so you Arizonans, you live in Southern California for at
I
least
live in
our
both
region.
places, actually.
Okay. Then we also have a region now in Texas, and we are opening 2 regions later this year, one in the Midwest, the Chicago, Detroit area, and then off in Washington, D.C.
Wow. It's literally exponential growth.
Yes, it's what we have found is by dividing and conquering, you can handle the growth. So what we continue to do is to move it down so you don't lose that collegial feel. You keep the interaction alive. You keep people talking and interacting with people so they're talking to friends. You know, they're not out there walking into a meeting and going, oh my God, there's thousands of people and I don't know anybody.
Yeah, you're starting to have regional conferences now.
Exactly. And in fact, what we found is the regional conferences are really promoting that very collegial feel that we had when we were very, very young and early on. And so we're finding that it's enthusiasm is rampant in those regions.
I would imagine
because
so.
they are active, they are participating, they're meeting their friends, and they are growing.
Yeah, I've attended a couple of those. I know what you're saying is absolutely true. We've been talking kind of around the issue, if you will. Let's take a couple of minutes and talk about the mission, the vision, some of the critical success factors that CCI and the board of directors, the representatives of the membership, the volunteers, have come up with. You know, what's your mission? What's your vision? Critical success factors. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. I think it'd be interesting to start with a little conversation about how we got to that point.
Okay.
The name, the mission, all of those things, they didn't just fall out of the sky. That was hard work.
It was not divined.
It was not divined. No, we didn't pick up a rock and it was written on it or anything.
Thou shalt be.
That's right. We literally used the tools of continuous improvement and went through the process of brainstorming and affinity diagrams, the whole 9 yards to come up with what is it that we wanted to be? What is it when we grew up we'd be proud of? And so we went off, and the first discussion we had was on the mission, and I think we have a foil of that as well. And as most of you that have ever gone through a mission generation, it took us a day, and we argued over every single word on
Absolutely.
that foil. So, and the good news is every year we go back to this and argue every single word on the foil to make sure we haven't lost something or we haven't gained something, that what we're doing, indeed, this is a living, developing organization. I think the key words on this mission statement really come down in 2 components. The first part, which is the inclusive part as far as what do we do, which is the developing, documenting, sharing, disseminating. And that is the issues that we've got. And I think the second piece of it is the bottom line piece, which is exactly the bottom line. The reason we've come together as an organization isn't just to share the latest and greatest, but it's to share what works so that someone will come in and say, I actually tried this, and as a result of me doing that, this is what's happened to my organization. My customer service levels have gone up, my return on equity, my return on investments, my employee morale, my bottom line, those performance metrics have indeed improved as a result of being a part of this council. And we take that very seriously because to me, you know, the ultimate metric, if you will, for goodness for CCI, as I say, our GNP has to go up. I mean, if we truly are doing the right things, so each one of us is selfishly looking at that individual component of our lives that we can improve. If we all do that, think about it. We've just raised the standard of living for the rest of us. And that's the mission of God that I'm on. So that mission is to be able to sit back.
You're the third blues brother.
That's right. That you know, I can have my grandchildren on my lap and saying, I had something to do with the next revolution inside this country.
That's terrific. That's great. Tell us a little bit about the vision. We've seen the mission now. What does the CCI vision look like?
The vision, again, is driven by and I think we have a foil of that as well, is driven by the the mission. And what it says is, what are we going to be? And this is where some of the key ingredients come out as far as member-driven and national. And we've had some long discussions, and I probably won't get into too much of the history here, but national versus international. And right now, the reason we have decided to be a national organization is, let's do what we need to do best first here. And then as we grow and continue to look at this, then we look at realizing that we are a global world, that we have to be a environment sharing across boundary lines. We have said then we will continue to put resources outside of the globe of the United States.
Does that mean if a country like Canada or Mexico or some other North American or South American country were to contact the council and say, we'd like to become a member, at this point you might turn them down?
No, what it actually means is if you are in those countries, in the plan meeting through 94 and through 95, we will not have resources in place in that country.
To support them.
So what we're doing is so absolutely we will welcome those people as members of CCI, but they have to realize most of the meetings are going to be here in the United States. And so that's the rub, if you will. That
you don't go to Bermuda?
We haven't yet gone to Bermuda. I'm waiting for the Tahiti trip, but we haven't done that yet.
Because what I'm thinking of in terms of the international membership, my best guess is that some of your first international members might be international components of organizations that are already members here in this country.
Right. In fact, today we probably have about a third of our organization is the international component, so that's already true. We already have the folks like the Motorola's and that have their entire worldwide operations of their organizations part of CCI. And what they are primarily using it for is less than networking, because it's a little tough to have a person come over for a 2-day, 3-day meeting from Europe or from Asia. What they have been doing, however, is standardizing on the CCI training materials, so at least what they are doing here in the United States can be moved offshore. And what they then do there, meaning how they improve what they are learning and doing there, can be moved back onshore. So again, we've got that free flow of information going on across borders.
But isn't it true that organizations that are, say, a major organization like IBM, where perhaps only one component or one part of IBM is a member, that they are not authorized to share that information with other parts of the parent organization?
Exactly. The way we have set up the structure is that, as I was saying earlier, the only fee that we actually have is the joining fee, the membership fee. And the way we base that fee is based on the number of employees in that joining entity, whatever that may be. And so what we ask the members to do is to say, put a box around something within your organization that you want to be involved in CCI.
Like Hughes, Tucson only.
Exactly. So you put a box around it and you say, we'd like the people at Hughes and Tucson to become members and become active and be able to come to meetings, all the other issues that we'll address. And what we ask then is, we trust you that then confines the box that will become members and become active in CCI, and that the services, the products that are delivered as part of your CCI membership then stay within that box. As a nonprofit, we ask, if you do break that permeability of that box, please at least pay for it so that you aren't stealing from some of the other members, because it does indeed cost us money to support those.
Yeah, it's an integrity factor.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's only reasonable. I noticed that one of the visuals you had up a few minutes ago was entitled Critical Success Factors. That was one that had the lead on the vision. Could we go back to that and find out what are some of the other factors that you deem to be critical success factors for CCI?
Okay. Yes, if you look there, I think we do have another foil, or a couple of foils here. What we did was we actually went through, and as a result, again, of our mission and vision, we broke down to 10 critical success factors. And what we're doing today is we are actually putting metrics behind these critical success factors.
Performance metrics.
Performance metrics.
Does a statistician's heart good?
As someone once said, we are eating our own dog food. We want to make sure that this is a palatable product. And so what we have actually initiated is member satisfaction. And so we go through and do member satisfaction surveys currently on a yearly basis for overall member satisfaction. But anything that we do, i.e. a meeting that we have, training that we conduct, we do have performance metrics for that and goals and objectives for it. The other is the idea of having it be very collegial and very open so that people will be interactive. And again, what we do is, besides looking at satisfaction metrics, we also go through and actually count noses, the BOSS, as they call it, and I think many of you know what that acronym stands for. The other point is to look at how people are actually using CCI to solve problems. And again, this comes to the bottom line, that it isn't just an issue of us getting together to kind of share fun to-do issues, but it's actually people getting together, sharing points that then solve problems, that make us improve in some way, shape, or form. And so again, we have put in place closed loop systems to look at how are our members faring as far as improvement inside their organizations, however they measure improvement. The other is, the next, if you look at the fourth bullet there, is to look at what are the materials and services that we do provide and make sure that all of those, again, deem to the fact of getting improvement within the organizations.
I think I'd like to ask you about that when you get finished with this slide, about what are those products and services.
Okay. The other part of it is to look at how we do incorporate leading edge thinking and methods in our products and services. So if you look at us developing training materials, maybe the content of that material might be, I don't want to say passé, but might be known by many individuals. We might take the next point, which is move that onto CD, move it onto a video-based training so that we can have a good leading edge process of even conveying that information.
Okay. Well, let's talk little bit about those products and services. Why don't you give us kind of a thumbnail sketch of some of the products and services that CCI has already begun to make available to its members, and maybe even talk about some of the ideas that are on the drawing board about future ones.
Okay. There's really, in my mind, three different things that CCI actually does. One is, and these are my words, is we get people with the same job, problem, or function hooked up with other folks with the same job, problem, or function. Again, the idea is don't be out there in isolation. There's others that are going about the same process. Let's learn from them. So a whole category of products that I'll get into are the networking products. How do we solicit questions that you have, and then how do we solicit answers to the questions that people have? So it's a pull system is the word that I like to use, because we're out there saying, what do I need? I need this from the network. And so how do we pull from the network to get those information? But again, each company, we find, has their gems. Everybody is proud of something their company does. Now, we have all these skeletons that we're embarrassed about, but everybody is proud of something within their organization. So we ask, what are those few gems that you have? Because throw those on the table. Those are the things that will continue to make this organization viable and growing. So that's one thing, and I'll get into the layers of the networking that we go through. The second point of it is, as I was saying earlier, we document what we learn. And so we do everything from documenting presentations, we call those case studies, proceedings, to we develop training materials. And to put it kind of crassly, I guess, we are probably the cheapest way to get great training materials that you possibly can find. We have found that organizations can't develop these inside themselves for a cheaper cost than we have, nor can they go out and license them in any way, shape, or form, because as a part of your membership, every CCI member gets licensed to every training product we've ever built, and as long as you become a member, any training product we build in the future. So we are continuing to be developing new products, and as our membership grows and expands, that list of what's on the drawing boards and the list of those products that we are developing continues to grow, and I, as a member, get those free once I'm a member. The third component is, and this is the only component that you do have to pay extra charge for, is the training services. We have found that even if you give many companies the networking, you give them the products, that either because of, well, sometimes financials, because of outsourcing, that they don't want to have huge training departments internally, just they don't have the expertise, the time, or whatever the reason, that they want outside folks to come in, the experts to come in and to help them through this process. And so what we've actually done is we have developed an organization that helps develop the training aspects within your company. They'll either train the trainers for our members, or they actually will conduct the training themselves for the membership.
Is this full-time staff members that are doing this?
Again, if I go back to the staff question that you have, the answer is no. What we've done is we have outsourced nearly everything except for those, as I said, the true kernel components of the organization, realizing that today, for example, re-engineering may be a hot topic, business process improvement, quality functional deployment may be hot topics. We go out and actually certify experts around those topics and then make them available to the membership. Next year, God only knows what will be the hot topics, and so as we continue to move forward in this organization, we don't want to be hampered by saying, oh, we have this staff, we have to protect their jobs. What we do is we say, we have to move with the membership. You know, my analogy is I say, today we may be climbing a mountain, tomorrow we may be at an ocean. We better build ships. I mean, we can't have these mountain climbers sitting there going, I don't know how to build a ship. So what we've done is we've outsourced with these trainers and make them available to us, and we'll find the best in class trainers that we possibly can find to make those available to the membership as well.
You know, if I may deviate for just a moment, a couple of times you've mentioned about business process reengineering. If you'll permit me, last month's guest, Mike Broussard, was with Gold QPC, and a week from today, I'm going to be starting a 3-day seminar for Gold QPC called Using Business Process Reengineering and Integrated Product and Process Development to Overwhelm the Competition. If you'll forgive me, I had to get that little plug in on behalf of Gold, but you're right, it's a red hot topic, and we find that business process reengineering and integrated product and process development are opposite sides of the same coin, and it's difficult to talk about one without talking about the other.
Exactly.
Well, continuing on now with CCI, let's role play for a second. Suppose I was a CEO. Now, this is the only time in the whole world, my whole lifetime, that I'll get to be a CEO. Let's role play for a second, a little simulation. You're Pat Reilly. I'm a CEO of a company that's a prospective member of the Council for Continuous Improvement, and I'm not a believer, at least not yet. What's the first thing you say to me to try and convince me that CCI may well provide some solutions to problems that I don't even know I have?
Yeah, the first thing that we always look at is to understand what are your needs, what are your issues. So my first question to you would be, what is it you're trying to do? What is it that you want to accomplish in the next 6 to 12 months inside your organization that will make you a success? What are those? You know, we all have a small handful, so what are those specific points? Because somewhere in our organization, somebody out there is also doing those same points. And so what I attempt to do is to say, Jack, give me your best shot. What are those handfuls of things that you are looking at to try to do? And then what we will do is we will sift through the current membership to look at, have we done it? Are we doing it? Or more importantly, would you be willing to work with us to do it? Because the real answer comes at not only looking at the past, but if you look at what CCI is, we're looking into the future. We continue to push that envelope. You may have a great idea that nobody has done. And instead of saying, oh, well, you're not the organization for me, you don't do that, my answer to you would be, well, let's work together to do that. I will build the environment. You know, it's the old, if you build it, they will come.
Right,
if you build
exactly.
it, we will get people that are interested in that. And the good news is, I don't think to date we've ever thrown a party that nobody showed up for. So when people come and ask us their specific selfish questions, whatever those things are, we are able to find people that are right in that same boat.
In response to an answer like that, do you ever have CEOs that are sufficiently have blinders on sufficiently that you can't get through to them, that they feel like, no, this is not the organization I need? Do you have many turndowns?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we're a normal curve too. You know, if you look at the world, there's going to be people that just see this in their wisdom and say, this makes a heck of a lot of sense. You're going to see, the good news is that's the bulk, it seems today, of the world is in the nice side of that curve. But there are folks down there that say, we can do this all internally, that I have the staff to do this, that I have the wherewithal, that we have developed everything that I need to do, and sometimes rightly so. You know, this isn't the answer for everyone, and we know that. This is the answer for those people again, maybe to put it into crass terms, it's for those people that are shopping, that are out there saying that we know we don't have all the answers in the world. We know that there are probably others out there that have probably dealt with this problem.
And solved it already.
And have solved it, hopefully have solved it. And so those are the folks that we look for, is the people that are saying, I need the best environment to find the answers. That's where we come in.
Okay, tell us a little bit about these products and services that CCI provides. How are they developed? How do you go about generating a product or a service, the tangibles and intangibles that your members want and request? How do they become a reality?
Okay. Let me show a foil here, because I think I need to talk the process of how CCI works at the same time. We have actually found that problems seem to fall into 3 different categories. If you look at the left side of your screen there, what we call a call for action, SIG stands for Special Interest Group. It's if you're a company, any kind of organization have acronyms. We have our acronyms as well. But basically behind that is the idea that somebody can ask CCI a question. And I'll get into how we can get answers to that. But we have ways of finding answers to a one-time question. I wake up this morning with a problem, I call CCI, there are processes to look at finding answers for it. Secondly is that second column, the middle column there, is what we call study special interest groups. And what those really are is, I ask the question, but guess what? The answer can't be solved in a one-time discussion. It is bigger than this group get-together today.
An ongoing
It's an ongoing thing that we will look at, and we will develop an organization to continue to look at that. Again, those special interest groups, using the same analogy of eating our own dog food, we have a process that we walk through when you become an ongoing special interest group. You have a mission, a charter, you have resources, you have goals, you have agendas, et cetera, et cetera. The third part is really where you ask the question, which is the product development team. What we find is, as a result of us learning and networking with each other, all of a sudden someone will have the aha and say, I need to clone this behavior. I want others to do what I just learned to do. And so what we have developed is a process, again, a documented process that starts with some members saying, I would like a workshop or a training or a video on this specific topic. And let me just walk you through that process pretty briefly then. What they do first is they get together and, first of all, ask CCI to help them. And so one of the first things that CCI does is they find an instructional designer that can come in, because we want to use adult learning skills, the state-of-the-art adult learning skills.
The they that you just referred to as a study SIG?
That is the study SIG, right, which now we've evolved into what we actually call a PDT, product development team. So they have one step up on the evolutionary ladder, if you will. So this product development team, usually made of anywhere from 5 to 10 member companies, will get together with an instructional designer. And what the instructional designer's job is to solicit from them their needs. What is it that they are trying to accomplish? What's the message they want to get across? Who's the audience, et cetera, et cetera. So they go through the adult learning skills and techniques at that process. What they also do is to say, do we have the right people in the room? And oftentimes the answer is no, because we have the blind leading the blind. It's the people with the pain in the room as opposed to the doctors in the room. And so what we then do is find out, what do you have, what do the other CCI members have, and who in the world would be an expert that we should approach to build this workshop for us. And so at that time, we then hire a subject matter expert. We spend real money. In fact, I was just looking at our annual report, and we spend around 35% of our dollars runs in this product development process world, where we then go out and basically hire consultants to build what we call now the blueprint. It's the next level down of detail, actually talking about, are we going to be, is this lecture, is this lab, is this hands-on, et cetera, et cetera. So we get into the real specifics of it. Then they go off and do the development. Us guys, us members, if you will, our job is to review the process as it comes back. The subject matter person will give us this process, and then to actually be in the pilot test to make sure indeed what we thought we were going to develop indeed did get developed. So we have an alpha test where us, the product development team, looked at it to make sure it hit our spec, but then we go into beta test. Real people, real problems with coming to this class to actually see, did this work for us? And at that time, when we've passed the test, so to speak, we then go and actually go into desktop publishing and then final releasing. So it's a very rigorous process that we go through. And what we're looking at now is cycle time improvement, because we have a process that today is probably a 6 to 9 month cycle time. For you product developers, you may find that state of the art. That's not good enough for us.
That's right.
We want a faster cycle time, and so we are actually trying some things this year to get that process down in a 3 to 4 month process. So we have a goal of having that cycle time as we go through this process.
And the membership gets this without any additional expenses beyond their regular dues.
Exactly. So when a new product comes out, for example, last Monday, we released a product called the self-assessment tool. It's a software product for us to go in to assess where we are, and I'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation. But that release was released to all of us. And so all of the members now have this assessment tool that they didn't have 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, that they now got free in the mail as part of their membership. And included, if you want, you can actually get the products that are developed in paper form. You can actually get the soft product as well. So you can get the software product to actually then do your changes, put your logo on it, customize it to your specific examples, whatever you need to do to make this a living, breathing document in your organization.
Now that's very interesting. What I hear you saying is that a member organization can take a product that has been developed by CCI and its volunteer members and then customize it so that when it's presented within their own organization, it looks like, for all the world to see, like it was internally generated and completely developed internally, has their own logo on it, being presented by their own people, and the fact that it was developed outside of the company through the membership in CCI is known only to the people who participate in the CCI relationship.
Exactly, exactly. What we find, again, the normal curve, we find people that just take the CCI products and run with them. You know, they just use them. They're self-directed products, so they have training materials for the instructor, they have materials for the students, they have the overheads, etc. But then on the other end of that continuum is we find people that have so thoroughly integrated. In fact, I went up to Alan Bradley, one of our members, and was looking for the CCI library, and guess what? I never found it. And you know what? I had to open one of these little Alan Bradley booklets, and I went, oh, I know that picture. Oh, those words look familiar. So it was actually so incorporated in their training that I never saw it. Never saw it.
Yeah, that's what we did with SPC. It uses Missile Systems Company. Is we took the materials that were developed by CCI and incorporated them into our own materials, you know, on a selective basis.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, I see that we're coming very close to finishing our first hour. Let me review with our viewers the format here. We'll be taking a 10-minute break from 5 minutes before the hour to 5 minutes after the hour. During that break, I would encourage you to call or fax in any questions that you might have relative to the topics that we're discussing today, Council for Continuous Improvement and the National Learning Environment. And then when we come back, we'll get into some fresh topics that we haven't addressed already. Specifically, you heard Pat make reference to Vice President Gore earlier on in this hour. He's going to tell us about the opportunity he had to spend some time with Vice President Gore and what they talked about relative to the Council for Continuous Improvement and building a national learning environment. So when we come back, that's something that you can look forward to. Again, the phone number, the fax number, let's bring it up on the screen. Both area code 602. Phone number is 621-7471. And the fax number is 621-8136. We haven't gotten any calls yet, haven't gotten any faxes yet. I'm hoping there's somebody out there watching this. I hope that we're not just spinning our wheels. Hopefully by the end of the broadcast, a number of you will have called or faxed in, and we'll know that you're out there. As the old stand-up comedians used to say, I know somebody's out there, I can hear you breathing. In this case, the light is on, I know that the telecast is going. We've only got a couple of minutes left, Pat. Let's begin to talk about a thing that I've been reading about in various quality-oriented magazines. I know I've read about it in Quality Magazine, Quality Progress Magazine. I may have seen it in some other publications. A thing called CIIS, the Continuous Improvement Implementation System. We've only got a couple of minutes left. But why don't you tell us about how that relates to the products and services that are the property of the Council for Continuous Improvement?
Okay. What the CIIS is, it's actually CCI's roadmap, if you will. So if you, and I'm going to use poor English, so bear with me for a second. If you look at what
I'm an engineer, I'm accustomed to that.
If you look at what we're trying to do is we're saying that there are better ways to run an organization. And if you look at the issue that we've got is there should be more better ways than other better ways of running an organization. And so what we've been attempting to do is to find the best way of running an organization. And when we come back, what I'd like to do is to talk about what we have learned. There are definite issues that are addressed in many, many companies that we're beginning to find are standardized across many companies, and that's part of the CIIS.
Great. Okay, we'll look forward to talking about that when we come back. In the meantime, do whatever you have to do, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes. We'll come back with more CITV with our guest today, Pat Reilly, the founder and chairman emeritus of the Council for Continuous Improvement. For the second half of our August 8th telecast, featuring our guest, Pat Reilly, the founder and chairman emeritus of the Council for Continuous Improvement. As I noted earlier, this is Continuous Improvement Television, CITV, and I'm Jack ReVelle. We're in our second half now. We're going to continue our discussion of the Council for Continuous Improvement, and just before we broke, Pat began to tell us about the Continuous Improvement implementation system that the Council for Continuous Improvement has gotten involved with a publishing firm called Quality Resources. Pat, continue your story, if you will, please.
Yes, the Continuous Improvement implementation system is really out there for a couple of reasons. One is that we as members would like to have a roadmap, suggested roadmap. I don't know if any of our audience out there cook, but I love to cook. And one of the things that I find
You're cooking that right now, Pat.
That's right. One of the things that I like to do is to look at recipes and then take those as ideas for how I like to cook. I love garlic and all these other spices. So what I end up with doesn't exactly taste like probably what the person had intended. Well, the CIIS is pretty much the same thing. In my mind, it's a cookbook. It's a way to look at how have other organizations gone about what they've done. I don't have to use it word for word. I don't have to say, I disagree with line item 7. Well, don't put line item 7 in. If you use a different spice, put that in instead of line item 7. So what we have done is we have built this continuous improvement implementation system to help us as members figure out where are we and how do we get beyond that. How do we get to quality heaven, or where the head is.
Nirvana.
Nirvana, exactly. The other point is that CCI has to figure out how to spend its money. We are taking good hard-earned dollars from the membership. And one of the things that we can't do is just say, well, the squeaky wheel gets all the money. We have to have some rhyme or reason to this. And that was the other main driver behind the continuous improvement implementation system was, and let me use CIIS in the future, it's a little less words. The CIIS was there to give the folks on the board the way to look at where are we, what are the holes that we have, what are the issues that we need to address as an organization, because some of those issues pop up from the members, but others might have to be driven, if you will, top down, because we do have a vision of where we want to go. And if we have a foil there, I'd like to show that now and just talk about how we developed the CIIS and actually then what it is. So if we could put that foil up on the screen, I appreciate it. What it shows you is actually 3 different components of a cube. And Jack, because you are an engineer, you'll probably like this. I had a problem with it when I first looked at it because I didn't think 3-dimensionally, but I love it now, and I'll tell you why. But if we look at the front face of that cube, we actually said that there are 3 different components that we have to address. One is the customers. So what we found when people are going through looking at their organizations, they have to take a customer perspective. Secondly, what are the processes that I have to support those customers that I have out there? And then thirdly, what's the infrastructure that I need to build within my organization to support those processes that, again, support those customers? So that is one way to look at the organizational interfaces and key issues.
That's a good flow.
On the second side of this is really, if you will, the scientific method. Some people call it Plan, Do, Check, Act. Baldrige calls it more along these words, but the whole idea is figure out where you are and build some sort of a plan. Go out and try it, test it, make sure that it works well, beta test it, if you will. Then go ahead and deploy it across the organization, then integrate it, and then begin the process over again. So it is a Plan, Do, Check, Act process.
Yeah, the Baldrige words are approach, deployment, and results.
Exactly. The third component of this, some people like to call it Hoshian planning, but basically it says that somewhere, hopefully, there's an executive within this organization that has a vision of the future, has a vision of what they'd like this organization to be. Somehow that vision has to go through the departments all the way down to that person that turns a screw, answers the phone, fills out the paperwork, works in the operating room, whatever it is. We've got to make sure that the results then support that vision. The nice thing about this is, if you think of it, it's a 3 by 4 by 3 cube. And what it allows you to do is to say, I'm at the business level of my organization, for example, and I'll show you that's what this is about. I'm at the assessing and planning stage of it, and I want to look at the customer. A lot of people call this re-engineering. I mean, it's trying to figure out what you need to do differently now to address your customer. So what this allows you to do is for each one of those components, 3 by 3 by 4, is to find out where am I, what is it that I want to key on today, and then what are the activities that I need to do. So if you look at it, you can live in that domain within the larger domain of the world here.
Gotcha.
Within each of these domains, there are actually pages then that support it. So it says that I'm in the assessing planning phase, I'm looking at the customer stakeholder, and I'm at the corporate business level. So that's that little piece of the cube that we just pulled out. For each one of them, it's got the task that needs to be accomplished. It's got the output of that task that I need to accomplish. It's got a metric for the output of the task that I need to accomplish, and where we're spending our time right now, what is out there in the world that will support all of these activities, not only within CCI, but we actually have some graduate students looking at the breadth of things, everything from the Gold QPCs and the ASIs to, what is Dorian doing these days, and Mike Hammer, and what, et cetera, what's Jack ReVelle doing this month? So
not a lot.
That we're looking at what are the issues that will support this process.
This is brilliant in its simplicity. Where did this come from, the CIIS?
It actually came from a group of people within CCI. The 2 main drivers behind it are a fellow by the name of John Waite from National Semiconductor, and then a woman down here at Lockheed down in Houston, Texas, that has been instrumental, Carrie Williard, in making this come alive. She has been very instrumental with putting Lockheed's issues together, and then by working with now about a dozen or so companies within CCI, getting some semblance of order from all those companies. Because it's funny, you think that we're so different and my company does everything just its own way, but when you begin to boil it down to this level of detail and this level of issues, it becomes a very an easy flow to follow. And you start seeing that there are common threads throughout all those diverse organizations, whether I'm in the CIA or whether I'm down here making Fruit Loops. I have the same issues. And there was not to put any aspersions to either of those organizations.
Talking though about quality resources, the CCI has a business relationship with quality resources relative to the CIIS. I know because I've seen the ads in these magazines. Could you tell us a little about how CCI is working with quality resources and what the intent of that relationship is?
That's why we hooked up with Quality Resources was that we realized that because of the way that we've priced the organization and the amount of effort that it takes to be involved with CCI. I mean,
And it does.
And it does take effort. I mean,
right.
really, if, it's like a health club. I can join a health club, but if I never go, that's what I get. I pay my dues. So there are two requirements. One is to be a dues payer within CCI, but the other is to be active in it, meaning ask questions, be involved, throw in those gems that you're proud of. And what we found was that there are many companies of a size that cannot afford the time or the investment within CCI. But we wanted to get to those people because we're coming up with some wonderful ideas. How do you get that across to the population? 95% of American industry is less than a couple hundred people. How do we get to touch those people? And so what we did was, after talking to the members and looking at all the different options, we came up with a distributorship policy with Quality Resources where they offer these products that CCI develops for fee to anybody that wants to buy them. So we have put together a process that we, industry, are developing these products, and then Quality Resource can get those to those people within the industry that may never join the club of CCI but still want to get access to the intelligence of CCI.
Then the money that is generated out of this relationship, I assume, goes to helping to keep the dues down to the people that are, or the organizations that are paying the dues each year.
The whole idea behind this relationship was to help both the non-members and then to help the members by keeping
Again, brilliant in its simplicity. That's great. Well, let's move on. Talking about CCI still, of course, what are some of the networking opportunities that exist for members, member organizations? What can they expect to find in the way of opportunities to meet with other organizations that are either in their own industry or doing the same kinds of things that they are, or facing the same kinds of problems that they're facing?
Okay, we have built many ways of getting to our membership. Again, my words, I tend to call this chumming. You don't know what's going to rise those people to the surface. So some people are readers, others like to go to meetings, others just like to pick up a phone and make some phone calls. So what we've done, and we have a foil of this as well, is we have put together multiple ways to touch the membership. The simplest of ways is somewhere within the United States, just about every month now. In fact, I think we've figured out every month but December right now, we have a meeting going on. And these, either general sessions or regional meetings, are meetings where we have presentations by the members based on member requirements for what they want to hear. So the agenda for our meetings literally comes out 4 to 6 weeks before the next meeting, because again, we don't know what we want to talk about in October until August. So right now we are saying, what do we want to talk about in October? So this is a fast-moving organization. We can hop on a topic that becomes of interest to people immediately, within months, as opposed to many organizations, they're talking years in advance to get speakers and et cetera, et cetera. So in those meetings, what we're calling here general sessions, we have everything from networking exercises. That's a way to break the coldness of walking into a room of people you don't know. So we have very formal ways of getting people involved, getting them engaged. The others is we have an open mic activity, which we call here calls for action. And what that is anybody can walk up to the microphone and say, hey, who else is out there and trying to do blah, 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 fill in the blank, whatever that is. Additionally, what we have there is we have what we call the special interest groups, and I'll go into who some of those special interest groups are, as well as benchmarking meetings, because sometimes people want to hear some best in class, not just the stories of what's working, but tell me how you measured it and some benchmarking results. So one of the ways we touch the membership is through meetings. As I said, and somewhere in the United States, you can go to a meeting every month, and those are free, and that becomes part of the membership dues.
And these are all over the country, I gather.
Exactly, exactly. In fact, we're having our next one right now. We're working to have our next, we have a meeting in Washington, D.C. in October, so we were putting that together. We have a meeting actually in 2 weeks in Northern California, so, and in between there is a meeting in Detroit, so we've got
That's great. Okay.
nice rollout. The other activity, and if we'd come back here, I've actually pulled some props to show, is we have things that we call newsletters and proceedings of the meetings. So one of the things that we have is, of the meetings that we have the ability to make minutes of the meetings. And so this was a meeting that we had a couple of months ago. We have the minutes of that meeting. Additionally, what we have is we will actually document the presentations. And so we have the documentation of all the presentations that were made. Actually, one of the ones that I know you know this gentleman quite well, Dr. Kurt Ryman.
Good friend.
He runs the Malcolm Baldrige office, and he came in and met with a group of our CEOs and told them, here's what I'm finding running this Baldrige office of what you guys have to do. And so he came through, and what we actually then have is a complete documented presentation of what he said. So we capture what he said, and then the foils that he presented to us of what are the issues that, again, we have to do as CEOs.
Yeah, I recall a couple of years ago I was invited to come into a meeting of the entire membership, and I made a presentation on quality function deployment, and it was beautifully documented. I'm trying to think, his name is Mark Miyashi. Who's the, as I recall, the CCI correspondent to the Quality Digest magazine. And he did a beautiful job of documenting what I'd said and the various visuals so that the membership, if they wanted to find out a quick and dirty overview of quality function deployment, could access that at no cost.
The other documentation that we've done is we develop newsletters. So every 2 months, a newsletter goes out and talks about success stories. So again, you talk about the metrics within the newsletter. We have very specific metrics and how people have done it. One of the other activities, which I think is quite interesting, is we have come out with I'll call it the Yellow Pages. It's a networking directory. What this is it goes through and talks about here are the different people that are willing to talk to us about different activities. And so we have topics, everything from, and I can't read this upside down, but senior management commitment and involvement. Here are folks that have said that I can be contacted around that topic.
A minor topic.
A minor topic, that's right. Most of us don't care. SPC, hopefully your name's on here somewhere, Jack. So there's folks here within SPC. So we have a way of getting to the membership for those people that don't want to go to the meeting, don't want to have to be real gregarious or outgoing, can go to a Yellow Pages and say, I have this problem. I have a way to answer this problem by going through the Yellow Pages.
By the way, you folks that are watching, you don't have to fine-tune the color on your set. They really are white. They're going to become yellow, but they're now calling them the Yellow Pages.
They figured they showed better on TV in white, so we played that. One of the other things that happens is on Fridays of each week, we have additional call for actions.
Right.
So on a real-time basis, if someone this week has an issue that we can't address internally and wants to go out to the 180 CCI members, we have a way of doing that. And I won't try to show these, but let me just read some of these. For example, a couple of weeks ago, call for employee code of ethics. So this is from someone at the Square D company was saying that they want to look at a code of ethics as a model that they will be using. Call for information on how you've changed your budget process to incorporate continuous improvement. Again, maybe a topic that may be of interest to people. What we do then...
It ought to be if it's not.
Exactly. What we do then is we go out with these calls for actions to the membership, and then as a result of that, for example, the one that I have here is from the members, we actually then get responses. And so this fellow from the LifeScan Corporation went out and said, I'd like to get some recognition program information. And so as a result of doing that, what we have is something like 20 companies came back saying, here is how I do my reward and recognition systems.
Wow.
So this became an easy way, again, to ask questions of the membership. Now, one of the things that often happens as we go through this process, we find that we stir up more questions than we answer. I mean, it was a great question, and you got everybody enthused. Actually, as a result of this particular project, the recognition project, we actually then hired the Wyatt Group to go to 80-some of our members, about half of our members at that time, it was earlier last year, about a year ago now, and went out and said, how are you doing your reward and recognition systems? And so we went to these companies and actually then heard from them how they were going about handling reward and recognition. So we now have a special interest group actually working on reward and recognition systems as a result of this. So that just shows how somebody had a strange idea, asked the council, how would you do this, or how are people doing this?
And the rock started rolling.
It starts, exactly. It's an amoeba. It just starts getting bigger and larger and then breaking out in different activities.
For the record, I should tell our viewing audience, the documents that Pat has just been showing on camera are all available to the members of CCI, but not to non-members. And so if you see something on camera here that you'd like to have a copy of, if you're a member if your organization is a member of CCI, that's certainly accessible to you. But if you see something on here that is not, and your organization is not a member of CCI, then I'm afraid that that is not available.
Jack, there's one last way that we network with the organization. This is a very new way for us. Just like today, I'm driving on the electronic superhighway. What we have done is we have introduced a product, a service actually called MemberLink. And what MemberLink is it's an online bulletin board system that allows you to pull up different information. It allows you to do interactive chat. It allows you to go out and peruse databases, if you will. So the whole idea is for those people that have access to computers and want to get access onto others through their computer, that's one of the newer ways that we've got of getting access to the other membership.
There's no additional cost.
There's no additional charge for this. And the nice thing about it is you have an internet access as well. So it becomes, if you're a member, you just got internet for free as part of your CCI membership. So it, again, becomes a nice way of connecting into that network.
That's terrific.
In fact, just this last week, I've been talking to the Naval Undersea Warfare Group up in Washington about what they're doing and what we're doing. They just won the President's Prototype Award, so we were kind of exchanging stories here.
Wow. That's certainly quite a story you had about the various networking opportunities that are available to CCI members. Even if there was not a single product available, which there are many of, I know, just the networking opportunities alone are virtually worth the price of admission. You mentioned during the first hour about current study SIGs. Could you talk a little bit more on that? Could you amplify on what are the present SIGs that are currently in operation?
Yes, today I think it's somewhere around 17, 18 special interest groups. And again, we have a couple of foils on that. Everything from, it's always interesting to watch CCI go through the history. About 2 or 3 years ago, one of the things that we spent a lot of time on were some of the more tool-oriented, meaning the basic tools and the 7 management tools and the SPC tools, et cetera. And then they evolved into the team side of things. And so if you look at the special interest groups that have come around from some of those, empowering teams and how do you work in teams, facilitating teams. But one of the ones that I think is interesting in the second one here is managing teams. What we found this year, or last year actually, was people didn't know how to manage teams. You'd start all these teams and managers were doing a not great job of managing those teams. So that's how, again, you see the ball rolling. Everything on here from compensation, benchmarking, new product introduction, I think the audience can read the rest of these. So we really run the gamut all the way through to the CEO forum, and that is the special interest group that I'm proud to say I'm the SIG leader on. And we get together about every quarter and have somewhere around 30, 40, 50 CEOs getting together. In fact, our next meeting is August 30th out in San Jose and Palo Alto. And if anybody out there does want their CEO to attend as our guest, I do have some guest spaces that I'm allowed to invite some people in. So if you do want to have a president of your organization come to find out what we're doing, that'd be great. The topic for that day is systems thinking. There's a new book that just came out by Peter Senge and a woman by the name of Charlotte Roberts. And Charlotte is going to be our presenter talking about what have they learned now in the last few years about implementing systems thinking and how does that apply to things such as the CEO's job, how does it apply to strategic planning, how does it apply to customer service, some very nitty-gritty issues that she will be presenting for a while. And then we break into small groups. So the CEOs actually get with other CEOs. And in my mind, that's where the learning begins, because that's really where we sit down and say, geez, I've got this problem, I can't figure, how would you? And we actually share those experiences so that I take that one good idea home.
And if I understand you correctly, ladies and gentlemen who are CEOs of organizations that are not members of CCI may be able to attend as your guest at this or future similar CEO SIGs. Could you give the viewers a phone number that they might be able to call to see if they could set up a reservation for their CEO as a guest?
Yeah, let me do that. I don't think we have this on the screen, but it's area code 408-283-1300. And again, if you do want us to send an invite to your CEO, we'd be happy to do that. It does need to be the person at the top of the pinnacle, whatever that is inside your organization. So if you're at a division, it can be an executive vice president or general manager that's actually the CEO of that division. So it doesn't have to be, yeah, the top dog at that pyramid.
Okay, repeat the number one more time since we don't have it written down.
It's 408-283-1300. And you can even leave it to my attention, Pat Reilly. I'd be happy to take care of that.
That'd be great. I think there'd be a lot of organizations that have not yet had the opportunity to affiliate with CCI. This might be their initial exposure, have their CEO come in and meet with other CEOs whose organizations are already participating with CCI activities.
It's interesting that you say that. We have found that this has been a very good way to, if you will, open the eyes of some of those CEOs, because they come in there and they're skeptical as can be.
Of course.
I mean, and we expect that. But then when they get in there and they start saying, you know, these are other executives running real companies that are sharing and learning from each other, and you find a changed person when they go out. And it's interesting, somebody from our federal government, and I won't say what organization, but an executive within our federal government came, and when she was walking out, she said, gee, it's great to see that private industry is just as screwed up as we are in the government. So whatever you learn is important.
I think that's an overstatement, Frank. Let's move on, if I may. We mentioned during the first hour that CCI has a whole series of products and services that are available to the member organizations. Could you take a couple of minutes and tell us about some of the existing products and perhaps even some of the pipeline products, those that are currently in the offing that have not yet hit the streets for the membership?
I'd love to. Currently, CCI has 45 training products within their domain, and we've spent over $2 million developing those products. And so as a price of membership, one of the things you're going to get is $2 million worth of products for free as part of your membership. I think we have a foil of the products as well. If we go through, there's 45 of them, and they run everything from some of the very basic benchmarking, how do you do strategic planning, which is that business and organization review, to BPI, the team courses that I talked about, quality functional deployment, and then the more advanced courses, if you will, in things such as design of experiments and this is an interesting place. If you look at those three, realizing a lot of organizations were having a tough time selling their managers on why you'd run an experiment, we developed a course for managers of why you'd run an experiment. Then we developed a course for the engineers that would actually run the experiment. And then lastly, what we found is that the people out in the line oftentimes would ruin the experiment by the way they ran it, that they didn't know that it was designed a certain way. You know, they'd sit there and say, well, it's Tuesday, why don't I just do all that today? And they thoroughly destroyed the design. So we built a course that's called the Basic Skills for Conducting Experiments. And as you can see, the rest of these as well. As a member, you get access to all of those, as well as there are a group of these that are coming out over the next 6 months, and we will get those as part of our membership as well.
Fascinating. It's a lot of product, a lot of service, and it's all yours for the price of admission.
That's right. In fact, one of the things I kiddingly tell people is I say, if nothing else, join for a year, and then after the first year, you continue to own these products, so it becomes a no-brainer decision to do that. Now, it's up to CCI to make you stay in, because what we want to do is to get you involved in networking, because that's really where the wins become. When you start learning, I can do this faster, cheaper, better, simpler, that's where the wins become.
That's terrific. Now, in addition to these products, the tangible things you can feel and taste and touch, you mentioned earlier about training services that CCI provides for its memberships, its membership organizations. Could you be a little more explicit in terms of the range of training services that are available? How do your members go about setting up some kind of schedule or that sort of thing in order to receive that training?
Okay. The training services really are geared to what are your needs as a member. So we don't go out and just broad base putting the training services out. What we do is we work with the individual companies to find out what their needs are. Do they even need CCI's training services? Many companies, the answer is no, and so we leave them alone. They bought membership, so we're happy with that. For those that need it, however, we have developed a training service offering that allows us to go in to tailor very specifically for the needs that you have within your organization. And again, we have a foil on there that talks about the different ways that we go about doing the training services. It has everything from the certified instructors that we go through. It has, again, if we can go to that foil, it goes through a process of how we certify them. The important part is the products that we're going to be using in the training are indeed the same products that you own. So the idea being that maybe you use CCI once and then you can go on your own because you've seen them drive the car, so to speak, and now it's available for yours to drive as well. What we have been spending a lot of energy on is looking at when you would use those products. Again, kind of a roadmap for maybe even how you open the box, if you will. And this foil is probably a rough rendition. Actually, in your handouts, in your packets, you can find a more detailed foil that has the words that you might be able to read a little better, but also has which of the training products that CCI has, where they fit, how you might use what before others. So it really gives those of you that are looking at even implementing a training plan within your organization has a way of view to look at how you might go about doing training based on, again, what we've learned from 180 other companies.
Okay, you know, we've only got about 25 minutes left, and so if I may, I'm going to kind of put CCI off to the side, not way off to the side, but off to the side for a moment. Remind our audience about those phones and faxes. Area code 602, phone is 621-7471, and the fax is 621-8136. We'd enjoy the opportunity to converse with you, to respond to your any questions that you may have or comments that you'd like to make relative to what you're hearing Pat and I discourse about. I don't think I mentioned before I get into the next topic here that today's telecast is coming to you from the television studios at the University of Arizona here in Tucson, Arizona, which is also the home of the internationally infamous X-Bar&R Ranch, of which I am the chief statistician. Those of you who had the opportunity a couple of months ago to watch our promotional telecast from these same studios will recall that we had a little sign up behind us that said it was the sign that I have now hanging in front of the X-Bar&R Ranch. And I discovered the other day, this shouldn't come as no surprise to a lot of people, but it certainly was a surprise to me, that the rear end of a cow and the rear end of a mountain lion are dissimilar. And what I saw walking by my ranch house the other day was truly a cow and not a mountain lion. But we learned by doing, Pat.
If it had been a mountain lion, he'd have saw your rear end, I'm sure.
Moving on to something I'm sure of greater interest to our audience. I know that you have met with Vice President Gore and talked to him about your concept of the national learning environment. Let me ask you if you have a personal vision for the future relative to the United States, especially with respect to the type of thing we've just been talking about, continuous improvement, organizations, consortiums, where organizations band together, whether they're from similar industries or different industries, or not even from industry. They may be from government, or they may be from the nonprofit sector, whatever they may be. What is your personal vision on this topic that I know you've already shared with Vice President Gore?
The vision that I have is, if you look at us as practitioners of continuous improvement, how do you build an environment where we can really learn and share and excel in that topic? How do we actually become better at what we do on an ongoing basis? And so one of the things that I have been spending a lot of time on is trying to understand, what does that mean? And it means a few things, at least in my mind. One is we have to build a supportive environment, an environment that rewards sharing. We don't do that today. You know, us in industry, we don't have a publish or perish type of a mentality. We've got a profit by next quarter mentality. So how do we begin to build an environment inch away that by me sharing information, that's really collateral. That's a very expensive piece of collateral that we have as individuals and we have as organizations. Secondly is, how do we catalog what we have? And I'd like to kind of get off on a tangent for a second, and this came to me very wholeheartedly in a real story. My wife, as yours, is a lawyer, and one of the things that she told me about a year ago, she said that her boss, her senior partner, came to her and asked her for some help in a particular ruling that he was having to work on. And he said, gee, I'd like to have something from the 80s or 90s that has to deal with this specific activity that I'm doing some research on. So she went running off and came back about 3-4 hours later and said, not only do I have a ruling on what you've asked for, I have a Supreme Court ruling on the exact topic that you asked for. And it's from the 90s, the 1890s. And so in 4 hours, she went through everything that they've done in law and found the exact point that was pertinent to that man's issue. And this was one of the points that I made to Vice President Gore, is I said, you know, when we reinvented this organization called the United States the first time, we were having a little problem with some guys over in England about how they were being pretty strict on our rules and regulations. We had no say in our government.
And taxing.
Exactly. So we spent quite a bit of effort in our legal processes. That was our first problem. Our Pareto chart of problems right then was making all men equal and making sure we had a good process that maintained that, Supreme Court, et cetera, et cetera. So we built an environment that protects that. And to this day, that works. I mean, rulings today go all the way back to the words on the what the Supreme Court did and what our founding fathers did. Back when. And so my challenge today is to say, how do we build that same environment for us in organizations, us in industry, us in academia, and us in government? How do we build the same database that we can go out to and say, I don't have to invent the wheel. Somebody somewhere somehow has done something about this.
Yeah.
How do I get there easily? And so the presentation that I gave to Vice President Gore was to build that environment. And I'd like to take a few minutes here, if we could go through to the foils, to talk about at least a rudimentary way of looking at that environment. I don't know if you can read this foil. Again, it's in your handouts. On the side of the foil there, it goes through functions that we have. Everything from at the top, it says CEO, and it says things like R&D and software, et cetera. Hopefully you can read it.
Boy, I'm glad you can read that, Pat.
Well, I know what we wrote, so that's the reason I can do it. If you look next, then
okay.
Somewhere in there, we do our function, those ones that run down that right side, in some sort of industry. We're in aerospace, we're in electronics, we're in the chemical business, we're in some industry. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could walk up and say, this is my function in my industry, and pull the drawer out? And in that drawer, it sits there and says, that's what I am. On the front end of it is just getting started in continuous improvement. Somewhere in there, I find out I am here, so it's got my roadmap of back to the CIIS, the roadmap of where am I. And somewhere up here is, again, nirvana, quality heaven on the other end of it. Wouldn't it be wonderful if, in that large database in the sky, I had access to all these different functions? And if you look at those grids, those drawers, many organizations add to those drawers. This isn't CCI's picture of the future. This should be our nation's picture of the future. That somebody out there that belongs to ASQC, for example, or belongs to GOAL, or belongs to an organization that has done something world class, somehow we need to capture that and document that in a way so that I, the next guy, the new kid, can come up and say, how do I do that? How has someone done this before me?
How was President Gore's reaction?
Well, it was interesting because I presented my paper, and this was, I got to admit, one of probably the highest level politician I've had to deal with in my short life.
Forgive the interruption, but you say you're presenting a paper. You didn't tell us, where was this paper being presented?
Last year, about a year ago now, well, actually it was in June of last year in Philadelphia. In fact, it was in Independence Hall, so it was a very significant event that Vice President Gore called about 50 of us to be on a panel with him to talk about what have we learned in industry and academia that we would like to share with the government, because he was working on what they called NPR, the National Performance Review, a document that was given to President Clinton and presented to the country in September. So as homework, if you will, for presentation of that paper, Vice President Gore called us together to kind of pick our brains.
That must have been a kick to get a call.
It was amazing, yeah. It was, well, talk about just in time. I got a phone call on Friday and said that you are start to meet with Vice President Gore next Friday in Philadelphia. So you talk about schedule changes and juggling schedules, and all of a sudden my priorities sort of shifted in that week. But what we put together, myself and a few other the board members of CCI, we went through and came up with some of the issues of an open environment and some of the activities we think need to take place. And that's what I was able to present to him at that session. And as I started to say, the thing that was wonderful after my little speech, the Vice President came over to me and said, "Pat, can I get a couple extra copies of that paper? And if this man runs for God, I will vote for him. Even if I disagree with his politics, he took care of me that I can tell you and my wife and my children that Vice President of the United States had enough to come over to say, I'd like to see more on
You
this."
didn't come back and tell him, don't you have a copy?
No, I didn't. I was very polite.
That's decent of you, Pat.
Thank you.
But it sounds like he was very receptive to what you had to say.
Very much so. We have been since then involved with the Federal Quality Institute, which are the consultants to the federal government for implementing this reinvention and the continuous improvement that they're going through. So we're very pleased to be working with the Federal Quality Institute. In fact, we're working with them on developing a course for all the managers within the federal government. The idea being that they have a shifting role. There's not a shifty role, a shifting role, which is they have to be better at their job. They have to empower their employees. They have to understand they have customers, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we have been spending time doing is developing a course that they then can present to those federal government employees.
Tell us a little more about the Federal Quality Institute. A lot of our viewers may have heard about it, but not familiar with, exactly what it is and how it fits into the overall government bureaucracy.
Okay. The Federal Quality Institute is a part of OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. And
that's the HR organization for the government.
And what they are responsible for, as I said earlier, they are the consultants for the entire United States government. They have developed a group of individuals called the PMC, which stands for the President's Management Council, of which Vice President Gore is the chairman, along with some others from the Federal Quality Institute, which is to make this top-down driven. And so what they have done is they have the assistant secretaries of the agencies and departments sitting on the President's Management Council, the PMC, setting direction, setting up goals, setting up agendas, setting up training plans, and really working the process of implementing this through all the millions of employees that the federal government has to get some level of standardization across that government.
Do you see this really happening eventually, or?
I really do. I mean, I must admit I was extremely skeptical saying that, this can't be done, but I felt it was up to me and quite a few other individuals to at least try. And what I'm finding is, and Vice President Gore said this first, and I got to admit I was a little skeptical on that. He said, it's not the people in the federal government that are the problem, it's the processes in the federal government that's the problem. And he's absolutely right.
That's right.
He's absolutely right. And I'm pleased to say
it's just
that.
like industry.
I mean, I walked in skeptical, and I have been sold. I watch these people, they care. They mean what they want to do. They're trying to take care of the customer, and they have passion for it. And it's an exciting time. And it's an exciting time for us to be able to work with them.
It must be a very exciting feeling for you to know that this fledgling organization that you created back in the late 80s has achieved enough national a national position that the Vice President of the United States would request that you be there to present your views on continuous improvement and incorporate that into the NPR that he was developing for the President's delivery.
Well, I'm very grateful, and so is CCI. We're very pleased to be part of the team.
That's exciting. It really is. We've only got about a little less than 15 minutes left, folks, and that means that when we go off the air, you're not going to be able to call or fax in your questions because Pat's going to have to fly back from Tucson back to his home in San Jose, and I'm going to have to go back to work building missiles. And so while we're here, if you want to share with us your comments, your concerns, your questions, here I go again, area code 60. I feel like this is a telethon. I'm not asking for money.
Pledges.
This is for free. I know, and it's worth every penny you pay for it. Area code 602-621-7471 is our phone number. Area code 602-621-8136 is our fax number. And you've got just over 10 minutes left to call or fax in your questions relative to the Council for Continuous Improvement, what it is, how it is, where it's going, and how it can be used to support your organization, whether your organization is in industry, whether it's in government, whether it's in the nonprofit sector, whether you're delivering products or services to your customers. The Council for Continuous Improvement is available to you, and any questions you might have about it. Pat Reilly, the founder and chairman emeritus, is here to answer any questions that you may have relative to what it can do for you. Well, in the approximately 10 minutes that we have remaining, Pat, I got a couple of more questions relative to the activities that we've got going on. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how we develop an open national learning environment?
Yeah, I think that what I'd like to do is go through at least a few minutes of some of the issues that we brought forth to Vice President Gore when we met with him. And one of the things that we talked about, and we have some foils here that I'd like to run us through, is that what does it mean to be building a national learning environment? And the first thing that we came up was the word open. And what that says is it can't be exclusive. We have to some way make sure that it's inclusive. So it's guru inclusive, it's nonprofit, it's academic inclusive, et cetera, et cetera. The other points that we said is it has to be accessible and easily accessible. Again, Jack, you fall in this category as a rocket scientist, but we'd like it for the non-rocket scientists as well to be able to get access to this, and that I can do it economically as well as universally, meaning that, again, if I'm in small, large companies, in no matter where I am in the nation, I have access to it. As I said earlier, that it is indeed a pull system. And so if we look at that, one of the things that we talked about is exactly what's beginning to happen is we have to have stretch goals for this country. Mm-hmm. Every individual has to feel that I have to become better. It isn't good enough to be the answer that, well, that's the way we've always done it, isn't the right answer anymore. That may be the right answer, but let's at least look at that to make sure it is the correct answer.
I've heard people say, if it ain't broke, break it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then fix it.
Exactly, exactly. It's the rebel out there. You go and see what you can do to improve. The other part of it is that what do we want access to? And again, it needs to come back to my needs as the implementer of continuous improvement. First of all, I need to get practitioners. I need to be able to talk to Jack ReVelle or a Pat Reilly or whomever, Greg Watson. The other part of it is I need to get a national curriculum and job aids and techniques. One of the things that we feel very strongly about is let's not reinvent the wheel, that everybody's developing the exact same curriculum. If you look at curriculum, 80, 70, 80, 90% of them on a specific topic are probably duplicate issues within it. So why are we spending all these millions of dollars across our country developing the same exact thing?
I've seen it done even within one company.
Exactly.
2 or 3 different divisions or branches at the same time will be developing, exactly the same SQC or design of experiments module.
Exactly.
A waste of energy, a waste of money.
Exactly. The other part of it is to then also capture those best-in-class processes and procedures and evaluations and roadmaps. Ours isn't the only roadmap. Ours is certainly not the only evaluation assessment tool. And then how do we begin to develop commonly used metrics across this as well? And one of the things that we looked at when we looked at all those different points was how do we segment it? And we really came up with 5 different levels of segmentation. First of all, as I said earlier, function. What I do as a CEO versus what I do as a mail carrier could be very different functional problems that I have to address. So I need to be able to pull from my specific function. Geographically, I may want to talk to my friends in Tucson, or maybe I want to talk here, or maybe I want to pull from the nation, but I should have the ability to pull from whatever circle, sphere of influence
so
that I wish to.
So you can discriminate as far as where you go.
Exactly. So I just want to talk to the guys in my hometown, or no, I'd like to see best in class across the nation. Again, as I said earlier, by market, industry, or discipline. How do I find out what's going on in different industries? How can I learn what's going on in my industry or others? And then what we found was a key ingredient was size. Some organizations of 50, 100 people are very different than an organization of 100,000 people.
Amen,
and they have
that.
very different problems, very different structure, very different resources. And then lastly, and certainly not least, is sophistication. Some of us are pushing the envelope. Others of us are down here saying, how do you spell SPC? What is it that we have to be learning from and to going forth in? So what we've come up with is how do we build this environment that has multiple ways of getting to that information, as I just said. First of all, face-to-face, on paper, audiovisual, teleconference, as we're doing today, or electronic. I can go through the computers of the future and interactive sessions. And then again, as I was saying earlier, how do we standardize this, both for the curriculum and for the job aids that we've got? So as we look at it, this is a changing paradigm. This, as you had mentioned earlier, it isn't any one organization doing this. This is not a CCI thing. This is a mission for a country, which means that we have to include other industry and trade associations, the people that have members that are learning. How do we pool those learnings that we have? Now, maybe we have to build a toll road for those things so that, I pay my nickel to go over there to look in their pool of resources, but we have to define those toll booths and ways of getting there. The continuous improvement practitioners, how do we get to the Jack ReVelles of the world? How do we touch your brain to understand what's going on there? How do we learn from that?
It's like a Vulcan mind meld.
That's exactly right. It's one of my heroes. So how do we get to the consultants, those others that are out there attempting to do this? And how do we get to the academic institutions that are giving our employees of the future? So the issues we see are a few things. One is we have to deal with the culture, and we have to deal with the economics. It can't have overhead. This cannot be a government-regulated thing. The model needs to be more of an internet-type model, a little easier navigating, but more of an internet-type model than a heavily regulated. And as I said, it's seen as a resource, not as a threat. So I, as a practitioner or an author, can add to the collective wisdom versus I see this as competition to my wisdom that I'm trying to keep and make a living on. And it's set up to be entrepreneurial. And the idea there being that maybe I, as someone with an idea, I can put a price on it and say I can make this available through the network for some way, shape, or form to get some gain, so I can have a living while I'm adding to the collective goodness of this nation. And that we continue to promote this and measure progress and change it. I mean, what it looks like today, it's kind of like saying we're going to live under the sea. I don't know how we're going to do that, but we have to move down there, and we will start realizing that, gee, things leak, and it gets humid, and it gets hot, and it gets cold. So we have to move into that environment. So doing that, what we're really saying is the challenge to each person and each organization is they have to be responsible for seeking, but they also have to be responsible for sharing. It's a two-way street. They can't just sit there and say, gimme, gimme, gimme. And that we have to build alliances and partnerships to build this environment, to build this database. We got to break the frame that's run this thing before. I'm a member of this organization. I don't talk to those people. That has to go away. That is passé. That is not in the year 2000. We have to make that go away. So our points is, how do we get the academic community in here teaching and supporting a national curriculum? How do we get it so that we have a fully trained and prepared workforce? And one of the things that I would like to announce today, on the first issue here, as of Friday, the Berkeley, out in
Cal Berkeley. University of California at Berkeley.
Yes, has agreed to be teaching the CCI course in their extension school. And we are now talking to other universities as well. So we are seeing this begin to take shape in a very small fashion to begin with, but that's how things start.
But I'm seeing now, and I'm hearing more than ever, that the Council for Continuous Improvement is the focal point, bringing together all these various resources and organizations, be they academic or industry or nonprofit or government, whatever they may be, to make sure that we are all working together for the continuous betterment of us all.
I think that's true. To be quite frank, we don't care to be the drivers of this, but we want it to happen. And if that means somebody has to get out of their chair and be the driver, that is the role that we accepted to take. And we said that we will be the people talking to the ASQCs and the goals and the FQIs and making this a reality so that we could sit here and wait, or we could take the proactive stance, and we've been very proactive in it.
Well, so far you've been doing a darn good job of it, and you personally, if you'll forgive my focusing in on you, without your brainchild, CCI would not have happened. Without your leadership, CCI, I believe, would not have continued to function as well as it has. And even in your role as chairman emeritus, but as chairing the CEO SIG, I see you personally as a person that is taking our country in a direction it must go. And for that, on behalf of all of us, I thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's something that needs to take place. We owe this to our children. And that's the reason that I will put my energies and my efforts into it to make this real. Somehow in my life, this is going to become real.
And for those of you, I'd like to share with you, Pat is a very family-oriented guy. He's got a 9-month-old son, Sean Patrick, who he was telling me last night, and it was very clear, not only by what he said, but the way he said it, is the love of his life. No disrespect to his wife, Franz, but Sean is the love of his life, right, Pat?
Yeah, he's got my heart. He stole my heart. Yeah.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left, folks, and I got to be honest, I'm disappointed. None of you took the time to give us a call. You know, we had all these beautiful open telephone lines and fax lines, but nobody made use of them. And we're about ready to come to a close now. Pat, we've got about 2 minutes left. Could you give me an idea of if you've got only one thing that the folks were to remember? Now, they'll remember a lot more, but what's the thing that stands out in your mind as being most important about CCI and participation as a member in CCI? Why do organizations join? Sum it up.
Yeah, I think that be selfish. I guess if I had to say anything, it's be selfish. To realize that we owe this to ourselves, we owe this to our companies or organizations that we work for, and we owe this for our nation, and then we owe this for our legacy. And when you sit there and look at what can I do to improve myself, my organization, et cetera, you will, by doing that and working in concert with others, be actually working on what's going to make this country even more successful in the next century. And I think that's the key ingredient to this is don't sit there, I mean, I'll steal the Nike ad, just go do it. It's not sit there and wait for somebody to intervene in my life. This is not a practice life. This is my job. I have to do this. This is it. I don't get to play this again.
I like that.
So I need to take the initiative to make this real. So the challenge I've got out there is be selfish, make this real for you, make this real for your organization, and it's going to work for all of us.
That's beautiful. This is not a practice life. This is it.
This is it. This is the one. This is the only one I know of. So.
Me too. Well, we've got just about a minute or so to go, and so what I'm going to do is start winding this down. I want to take just a moment to say, Pat, as always, it's a pleasure being with you. I enjoy your company. I enjoy your insights. I hope that our viewing audience had the opportunity to hear what they wanted to hear and learn what they wanted to learn. And I thank you very much for being here. It was a terrific opportunity, I think, not just for me, but for all the folks that were viewing out there in the NTU network. Next month, we'll be back in September. Our guest will be Gregory Watson, formerly Vice President of Xerox Learning Systems, and as I mentioned, now a full-time consultant. Greg will be talking about benchmarking and strategic benchmarking. In the months that follow, we'll be talking to Dorian Shainin, talking about statistical engineering and his perspective on the concept of design of experiments and some rather unique tools that Dorian has developed and shared with his clients throughout the last 50 years. And finally, George Labovitz, Dr. George Labovitz, the CEO of ODI in Boston, will be talking to us about making quality work. This is Continuous Improvement, and I'm Jack ReVelle, and I say thank you very much.